Only if the client is having the requirement to represent some analytical data, so then only the charts concept will come into picture. But believe me, charts is one of the easiest topic in SAP UI5. SAP UI5 got the finest libraries which will do automatically the complete charts creation and all. So the only thing you need to do is supply the data. Just supply the data to it, understand the library and its subparts, and the rest of the thing is done by the library itself. Now without any delay, let us start what are the libraries that are needed for the chart and what each library will do. So the chart has the very main library, so which is called Viz library, VIZ. Actually, the VIZ is the first three letters of visualization. Okay, visualization. So the first three letters are given as a library name, Viz. Now Viz is a main library, and this library also has two child libraries, so which will come in step 2 and step 3. So using this Viz main library, actually the complete name is viz.ui5.controls something is there, but I'm just giving the main name here. Otherwise, if you want the complete name, that also I can give you. Yeah, so this is the complete name of the library. SAP.viz.ui5.controls means SAP visualization controls. So that is the complete meaning. SAP visualization UI5 controls. Okay, right. Now what this particular library will do, this library has a UI element called VizFrame. So if I have to declare that UI element, I need to use this shortcut name. So the shortcut name we have given as Viz. So I need to write Viz : VizFrame. Okay. Now this VizFrame is a UI element. So what exactly is a VizFrame? VizFrame is an area on top of the view where the chart is plotted. Got it? For example, so we already have the view, right? So let's say this is the view. On top of the view, directly chart will not be plotted. So if the chart has to be plotted, first of all, the Viz frame should be there. So there should be a frame on top of which the entire chart will be plotted. Okay, so basically the chart plotted area is called Viz frame. Okay, right. So this is the very initial step. So it is just like if you want to construct a building. So what is the first thing you will construct? The basement. On top of the basement only, you will construct the building. So similarly, this frame is the on top of the view. So this is the frame. On this particular frame, the entire chart will be plotted. All right. So this VizFrame library has the properties like height and width, and this also has another property called Viz type. So this Viz type is nothing but type of the chart. Type of the chart. So in this type of the chart, you can write pie chart, column chart, bar chart, line chart. So all these charts you can draw, you can plot. So that's all. These are the properties of the Viz library. So first one, height and width. Second one, Viz type, nothing but type of the chart. Now coming to the second library. So this is what it does, guys, nothing much. So it creates a frame. Now library number 2. This library is a sub-library of the VizFrame, Viz library. So let me give the name of this library. All right, this is called data library once again. Now this library is called VizData library. So from this you can understand SAP visualization UI5 data library means for this visualization nothing but for the chart construction, what is the data involved? Okay, for construction of the chart, normally what we require, we require the x-axis data and y-axis data. Correct. So if you do not supply your x-axis data and y-axis data, do you think the chart will be constructed automatically? No, right? So that is what this library will take care. And since you can see sap.viz.ui5, so till here it is common. Only data has added. So that is why this is called a sub-library. Okay, this is the main library and this is the sub-library. Now coming to the shortcut name, you can give shortcut name like data also. For example, for simple form, what is the shortcut name we give? F. Correct? So like that you can give a simple shortcut name also. You can give data also here like this. But why we are giving viz.data generally to represent that this particular library is a sub-library of this main library viz. So we give viz.data. So this is a kind of a naming convention. But technically, even if you follow, even if you do not follow, nothing will happen. So whenever there is a parent library and child library, the child library shortcut name will be preceded with the main library. So first the main library shortcut name will come and then the dot and then the child library shortcut name. So which is data. So viz.data is the shortcut name for this particular library, sap.viz.ui5.data. Now coming to what this library will do. This library stores the data belonging to your x-axis and y-axis and from which entity set this particular data is coming. So three informations it will store. The first one, entity set from which the entire data is coming. Second, out of that entire data that is coming from the entity set, which value you want to represent on x-axis, which value you want to represent on y-axis. So let me write down. So under 2.1. So this viz.data has a sub-library. So this viz.data itself, so it's a library, that is fine. This has a UI element, not UI element, we call that as subpart, flattened data set, which has a property, data property. Okay. So let us understand only pseudocode here. The first one is from which entity set your entire data is coming. Okay, data is coming. So this we will bind by using /employee set. Okay, that is first step. Second step, out of this data that we are getting from employee set, so from employee set we are getting so much of data. We are getting employee ID, name, designation, skill, all this thing. Out of this data, which data you want to represent on x-axis? So this is called dimension definition. So remember guys, normally x-axis values are called dimensions in SAP UI5. X-axis values are called dimensions. So dimension definition. So here we bind the property, direct property. Like for example, on x-axis I want to represent employee ID, then I will bind with employee ID. Or I want to represent an employee name on x-axis. That also you can do. So that is called dimension definition. Next. In SAP UI5, the y-axis values are called as measures. Okay. X-axis values are called dimensions and y-axis values are called measures. So you will be doing measure definition. So measure definition means out of this entity set, which value you want to represent on y-axis. So this will be the salary or rating, whatever. Okay, you can construct the graph against salary, against your what we call rating. So anything you can do. Okay, right. So this is the measure definition. So these are the 3 steps involved under step number 2. So which is data library. So the data library just holds or stores or points to the entity set, complete entity set from which the data is coming, and out of that entity set, which OData field should go and sit on x-axis and which OData field should go and sit on y-axis. So this particular information it will store. It will just hold the information. Okay. Now step number 3. So this is another last library, which is feed library. Which is feed library. So let me write down here. This is the last library, guys. Now again, you can see this is also having sap.viz.ui5.controls. Okay, and in addition, it has common feeds. So that is why this is also called as a sub-library of the main library Viz. And since the sub-library will follow the naming convention, that is parent library dot the sub-library shortcut name. So what is this feeds library? The feeds library will contact data library, get the data of x-axis, get the data of y-axis, and feed the data to the respective x-axis and y-axis accordingly. Okay, so I repeat once again, the feed library is responsible for feeding the data to the axis, respective axis. So the feed library has something called feed item with the type. So with the type, so basically the type dimension indicates that it is going to feed to the x-axis, and feed item which with the type measure indicates that it is going to feed to the y-axis. So let us understand only the pseudocode here. So the feed library has something called feed item. So using this particular feed item, it can feed the respective axis. It can feed to the x-axis and it can feed to the y-axis. So what is basically feeding? Feeding means feeding the data to a particular axis. Supplying the data to a particular axis is called feeding. Okay. So here the feed library will contact the data library. So it will go to the data library, get this employee ID data and feed this entire employee IDs to the x-axis, so that all the employee IDs will come and sit on x-axis. And using the same feed item library, so one more time, it will contact this measure definition from the data library. So it contacts the measure definition. So how it will contact the measure definition? So here we keep one name. So using that name, it will contact the measure definition and get the salary and feed this particular salary to the y-axis. So x-axis will be fed by employee ID. Yeah, employee ID, that is correct. And y-axis will be fed by salary. That's all. Over. So without writing any controller code, just by using these three libraries, we can finish displaying the charts. Okay. However, we write a small controller code also for setting some standard properties of the Viz. But otherwise, we are good to have this particular Viz chart only with the view code itself. Now I'm going to create a new project and we are going to write the same code, same steps. Okay, so whatever the pseudo code that I have written here, 100% same thing we are going to write in the project as well. So this one also I will create in the SAP Web ID because I need to deploy it. So right click new project from template. And you will also get an experience with SAP Web ID, at least 2 classes of SAP Web ID. So SAP UI5 application and name of the project, I am giving V72 charts and namespace com.demo. Got it? Now click next. That's view 1, that is fine, and finish. So whenever you create a new project in SAP Web ID especially, so change this particular path because SAP Web ID, this is a local installed SAP Web ID, so this must be replaced, otherwise you will get a very old SAP UI5 library. So replace this. In Business Application Studio, you no need to do this particular step because Business Application Studio always loads the latest version of SAP UI5. SAP_horizon. Okay, _dark. All right, fine. Then we also need to add the OData service. So right click, new OData service, and select our server ZD72_EMP_server. Click next and finish. Now this will add the OData service to the manifest.json, but OData model will not be created. So this is not created. We need to add the OData model also. And here we need to change our data source name, which is ZD72_EMP_. Yeah, so I think we are good to start our view coding. So I'm giving the title here like charts. All right. So first thing first, adding the libraries. So I'm going to add the libraries here. There are 3 libraries: Viz library, number 1, parent library, and then second library, data library. This is number 2, and third library, feeds library. Okay, right. So once you added all the libraries, now you can start the coding. So first, shortcut name of the library, Viz: VizFrame. VizFrame. Okay, right. So you can give some ID for this. So I'm giving this as ID VizFrame. Okay, and what are the properties? So it has a height and width property and Viz type property. So let's give the height. So height as of now I'm giving 100%, and width also I'm giving 100%. And let's give the type of the chart. So we call it as Viz type. So let me just cross check whether it is Viz type or not. Yes, it is Viz type. Viz type column. Let us start with the column chart. and then I will change it dynamically. Fine. So step number 1 is over, defining the frame. Now under this particular frame, the next one is defining the data. So data is a sub library, and this library we use under the subpart of the VizFrame. The VizFrame has a subpart called data, not data, data sets. Okay. Let me use this. So just like a few UI elements have some subparts, right? So similarly, the VizFrame has a subpart. It has totally 2 subparts. One is the data set, which is one subpart, and there is one more subpart which is feed. So basically the 2. Okay, I have defined both the subparts at a time. So one is data set, which is one subpart, and another one is feeds, which is the another subpart. Now under the data set, we use our second library, which is this one. Under the feeds, which is the another subpart, so here we use our third library, which is feeds library. Okay, fine. Now let us see the second subpart, first subpart, which is data set. Now under the data set, I need to use this data library. So let us define this dot data, which is the shortcut name of the library. And then now I need to define one thing called flattened data set. Flattened data set. So what is this flattened data set? It points to the entity set by using data property. So it has a data which is an aggregation actually. So this must be a binding with your entity set, employee set. Got it? Yeah. So that is step number 1. The viz.data library will point to the entity set from which the data is coming. Now again 2.2. So this is actually I should say 2.1.1 and this is 2.1.2. Means these two are under this particular data set. See, employee set is the main entity set. Under this employee set only your employee ID and salary, these two are there, right? Okay, so now I am going to define the dimension definition and measure definition. Now under this flattened data set, we need to do 2 things. One is dimension definition. That means I need to say which value should go on x-axis and which value should go on y-axis. So that is called dimension definition and measure definition. So this one is given as a subpart here, so which is viz.data colon dimension definition. So sorry, dimensions, which is a subpart name. So flattened data set, you can see F is capital. So that means this is not a subpart name. Under this, dimensions is a subpart name. Okay. Now under this dimensions, we need to write our dimension definition tag. Okay. So if you are typing in Business Application Studio, so this will automatically suggest which tag will go inside. Okay. But in SAP Web ID, it will not suggest. So now I need to write under this dimensions. I need to use again this sublibrary and then the dimension definition. So here, that's the advantage with Business Application Studio. So in Business Application Studio, if I write opening tag here, automatically it gives the dimension definition completely. But here it won't give. So this is the dimension definition. Now the dimension definition has two properties. One is the name to identify this dimension definition by the fields library at the lateral stage. So I will call this as EMPID. And the next property is value, which should be binded with the what you exactly want on the x-axis. For example, you want employee ID, then bind it with the employee ID. So this is called dimension definition. So dimension definition, name and its value. So this name will be referred by the feed library later on to get this employee ID value and feed it onto the x-axis. Now same three lines of code need to be repeated for measures. So copy this, paste it. In place of dimensions, you need to write measures. And in place of dimension definition, you need to write measure definition. Copy this and put it here. And you need to change the name and value. So name, I am calling this as salary. And value also, I am changing this as salary. Okay, all right. So with this, data set library is over. So this subpart is over. Now the last subpart is feeds subpart. So under the feed subpart, we'll be using third library, which is sap.viz.ui5.data. So this one. So let me use, sorry, not this one, viz.feeds. So let's use viz.feeds, which is a shortcut name. And then we have feed. The feed library has something called feed item. Now the feed item has some properties using which it will point out to the x-axis, and then it will contact this dimension definition using its name and feed this all employee IDs to the x-axis and all salary values, respective salary values, to the y-axis. So this is feed item, and the feed item properties are something called UID, means unique ID. So feed item UID. UID stands for which axis you want to feed. So first feed item, it is having a unique ID, and this category axis indicates I'm going to feed to the category axis. So what is category axis? X-axis is also called as category axis. Okay, it is not only in SAP UI5, it is universal terminology. Okay, so category axis is also called as x-axis. X-axis is also called as category axis. So till here, the meaning is I'm going to feed an item, and basically where I'm going to feed to the x-axis. So to feed to the x-axis, you need values, right? So from where you will get the values? So values I'm going to get from the dimension definition. So values, and then you need to give the name of the dimension definition. So the name of the dimension definition you have given is employee ID. So you need to give employee ID here. So most of the people working in the real time, they give both of them same, and they think that values means I need to give this binding. So they have given like this. No, actually values will contact the dimension definition with its name. So basically whatever you are giving here, the same thing should come and sit here, not this one. So basically the feed item contact the dimension definition using its name. Okay, and automatically this employee IDs will come. Okay, and there is one more property that is type equal to dimension. So this also you need to add. Type equal to dimension means with a x-axis value. Now copy the same and feed one more item, and this is for the value axis. This is called value axis. Means what is value axis? Y-axis is called value axis, and it is also universal terminology. Okay, so UID value axis and type equal to measure. So type means the type of the data. Obviously, when you are feeding to the value axis, the type must be measure, and when you are feeding it to the category axis, means x-axis, then the type should be dimension. Okay, and the values must come from the salary. Okay. Salary, and this is salary. Okay, save it. That's all, guys. It's over. Now we can just run this application and see whether it is the chart is getting displayed or not. It does not meet minimum or maximum number of feed definition. It is like this. 1 second.
Spelling value axis.
Yeah, value axis type measure. Yeah, that's correct. Value salary. So I'm just checking, is there any other thing that I missed? Yeah, seems to be fine now. Let us see. Yes.